Well, I guess we can start. So, welcome, Jacob. Round 2. All the equipment. Dude, the last time it was like the equipment was bugging out every 5 minutes. And
yeah.
Mitchell was here, which was fine, but it was just... So, I was trying to, like, go back and edit.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, there's just so many, like, cuts and takes that I was like, let's just redo this.
Yeah, it's all good, dude.
Just rewind it back. But, how's life been treating you since... When did we last do this? Like 2 months ago?
Yeah, about
basically,
that.
2 months. So what have you been up to? I know you went on a trip recently, been hanging out, kind of doing your thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I went on a kind of crazy trip. I had to go clean up my house up in Rexburg, and so I drove up there, and I spent 2 days up there, and then I spent 2 weeks in Utah. Yeah, about 2 weeks in Utah, and then I came back through Nevada. And then like 2 days later I flew out to Pennsylvania to go hang out with one of my friends.
Nice.
So I went to Philly, did a couple things out there, and then we went from Philly to North Carolina. So we passed through like Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And then we came back to Pennsylvania, and then from there we went to like New Jersey, New York, and then I flew to Chicago and Texas, and then came home. So it's kind of everywhere in the matter of like 13 days. What
were you guys doing? Just like hanging out, going on a road trip, and just having fun?
Yeah. Her grandparents is my friend from EFY that I met my last year of EFY like 7 years ago.
I met her, right? The birthday girl from that one party?
Let's see. Is that the one? I don't think so. No, I don't.
Different girl.
Yeah, I think it was a different girl.
Okay.
So, no, she, that's Demi that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Demi is my other homie.
Nice.
But no, this is Avery. So I ended up, when I was up in Utah, I was looking for some friends while I was up there, and I knew she lived up there, and so I reached out to her, and she's like, I actually just graduated and moved home.
Oh, nice.
I'm back in Pennsylvania. She's like, I'll be in Utah in May. We should hang out then. I was like, yeah, for sure. And I was like, so what are you up to doing? Because she was on her spring break, and she's like, well, I'm about to go move my grandparents. I'm going to road trip 9 hours to North Carolina. And I was like, I made a joke because like, you need a road trip, buddy? And she's like, actually, my mom just suggested the same thing. And I was like, I'll buy tickets and I'll come out there. She's like, do it. So I did it, and we went and road tripped, helped her grandparents move from Passey, Utah. They just got to North Carolina, and then we unpacked all their stuff.
That's cool. Helped
them with the house a little bit, and then that was that. So it was really fun.
Did you guys do anything like fun while you were out there?
Hit up New York.
Cool.
So we did a day trip to New York because she's 2 hours from New York City. So just jumped a train, went to New York, and then we went and saw Philly. Did a whole bunch of stuff. So
yeah, dang. Well, that's hype.
It was good times.
Yeah,
it was super fun.
And you just met them through through. What was it, EFY or FA or whatever it's called now, FSY?
FSY now. Yeah, it was EFY back in 2017. It was 2 weeks before I left on my mission. So
that's cool.
So yeah, we were good friends. And then she wrote me while I was on my mission for about a year, and then we lost contact until 3 months ago.
Yeah,
back at the very beginning of March. So
that's cool.
It's crazy how old relationships like that can rekindle so quickly.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's weird because I had a couple friendships where they were really solid, then they kind of disappeared for a while, and they're like, in the moment you're like, what do you do with it, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny how they can sometimes circle back around, especially, that's why I've always said, like, you just kind of want to be that consistent person.
Yeah.
Because you never know what people are dealing with or going through, whatever's going on in their life, but, if something happens or whatever, if they know you're the consistent person to turn to, then hopefully they work their way back around and, some things click and work out where you're back able to rekindle that friendship. And so which can be cool because sometimes like just being like on different pages, sometimes the friendship doesn't click at that time, right? It doesn't mean it won't later on, but
time and place for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely have learned that recently. So
yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm kind of curious. And we don't have to like dive into the details of it unless you want to. But what have you been like? What's been working for you as you work through kind of? I'll just say some of the like this recent kind of upstir in your life. Kind of had a big change in life, and I'm curious because I think a lot of people sometimes when those big changes happen wonder what do I do to kind of keep things moving and figure things out. So what's been working for you? What have you been doing and how's it going?
Yeah, dude. You can say the word, by the way, divorce.
Okay. I didn't want
No, you're totally chill. Yeah, it's one of those things that I've kind of worked through now, and so like,
Yeah.
you can ask all the questions you want, and I'll
good.
give you the answers. No, it was definitely something that I personally didn't want to go through.
Yeah.
I fought to make it work, and it sadly didn't end up working out. That was really rough, especially being the person that was like, let's make this work. Like, let's try to make things work. And, I learned that everybody has their agency and everybody gets to make their own decisions in the end. And so, coming to that acceptance is a little bit hard, but like, that was something I needed to kind of learn, I think. So, I still love and care for my ex-wife. She's an amazing girl. Deserves the world, and I wish her the best, and I wish it could have been with me, but sadly it can't. But no, so some of the things I've really been working on is I've been going to a lot of personal counseling, so like personal therapy. And then my personal therapy is travel. So that's kind of been that's been really helpful to me. I actually have been going to this counselor, super amazing guy. And he's just was like was listening to my scenario and everything. And after everything finalized and the divorce went through, he made the suggestion. He's like, hey, I'd suggest you get it back out in the dating field. He's like, I really think that would help you kind of move on. And I was a little bit like caught off guard, like, really? Okay. Like that, I was not expecting that suggestion from my counselor.
Right.
But I took his advice and hopped back into things, and it's been super, super helpful, like dating and getting to know people, and that's been super good. So that, and then I met with my bishop right before the divorce finalized. He's like, Jake, you're at a crossroads. Like, you can either leave the church and be mad at God kind of thing, or you can come closer to God than you ever have been. And for me, I was like, well, I obviously don't want the first of those two options. I'll take the latter.
Right.
And so that was kind of the thing is like, I really dove into like deeper than I ever had been, even on my mission, like into scripture study and to just coming close to God, trying to go to the temple more often. And it's been super good.
Yeah.
It's been super healing, and I can't say I'm perfect at it, but, strive to be my best, and I see the blessings day by day, and I've seen that weight lifted off my shoulders definitely especially by other people. So
I'm curious, like at the beginning part where kind of that acceptance of the situation, and like you mentioned how accepting that like she has her own personal agency and we all have our own personal agency, and sometimes it doesn't. This guy keeps trying to call me. Shout out. But I gotta answer him at some point. I keep dodging him. But good. So this idea that like accepting that people have their own agency, which can be difficult. Like, what helped you kind of, and some of it may have just been time too, but what kind of helped you think through that process and really come to that acceptance, I guess is the best way to put it.
It was really hard for me to accept, really, really hard. Like, I was genuinely like, I was fighting it hard. Like let's make things work kind of thing.
Right.
And, obviously in whatever divorce situation it takes two. Nobody's perfect. For sure. Life's hard. But that acceptance, like, it really was super, super difficult for me. And it took me a really long time to actually accept it. Like, even after the divorce was finalized for me, like, I was still struggling to accept it. And then I actually was on Instagram Reels, and I saw this guy. He's all like, oh, everybody tells you to move on. Just move on after a divorce. He's all like, and they're right to an extent. He's all like, you need to linger in your emotions, linger in your feelings kind of thing. And that kind of stuck out to me. I was like, oh, so what does that mean? And then he like actually went in. I watched another one of his videos, and he went into the explanation of that. And he's all like, you need to linger in your emotions and be in those feelings. And he's like, when you're sad. And he's this big burly guy, like tatted head to toe.
Yeah.
And so you really wouldn't think like, dude's got emotions, but he's got emotions, and he talked about it. He's all like, linger in your emotions, like keep a journal or do whatever. He's like, write that person letters, but don't send them ever. And so I have a file on my computer. I mean, I literally have probably 24 letters in there that like I've written out of frustration, out of anger, out of sadness, out of, shedding tears. Just like every emotion you could ever imagine is logged in this file that will never ever be sent to my ex-wife. But like it's for me mainly, and so document that. And I wouldn't say I'm 100% there, but I would say I'm a good and probably 90% of the way
for sure
there, and so that was kind of my acceptance, is like, okay, this happened. There's nothing I can do to change this. It's official. And so that's kind of how I really like dove into like my healing process was that. And then kind of talking about the situation with the counselor and loved ones, and just kind of seeing their point of view of the situation.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's a sign of a good counselor, though, like especially where, some counselors might have, and that may have been what you were thinking, is like, may have suggested more like, oh, don't put yourself out there yet. Like you need to kind of, let's take more time to figure out what's going on. But I think that's usually a sign of a good counselor, is when they tell you like, no, go do something, go take it. Because like, even when you mentioned traveling, that's kind of in your own way, that's an action of like going and doing something and being out and being present and active and kind of not letting your mind just dwell on that, like those concerns and worries. Because I think we were talking about it when we first were hanging out. Yeah. Like a few months back. And I remember we were talking about how when that stuff happens, like the first, unless you're, I guess, like maybe a little psycho or whatever, or what's the term when you're
narcissistic?
Yeah, unless you're like a narcissist where you never can see your own personal faults. Yep. I think most people, their first reaction is to go, okay, what did I do wrong? Like, how did I fail? Like, and then you start like play by play analyzing every situation, going, okay, where did I mess up? Where did I mess up? And like, it's half the time it's not even. Half the time, if you were to ask that person, they wouldn't even be able to recall any of the things that you did, because they're probably doing the same thing if they're not, like a narcissist or whatever, the term is. But, so that's like, I don't know. That's that in my, like, and I guess that's where that journaling probably comes in handy, like just accepting those emotions you have, and like first accepting it within yourself so you can accept it from that on the other end, right? Yeah.
That was something for me, like, obviously I know I'm not perfect and I did things wrong. And that was one thing for me, like, I made sure to write letters. There were a couple letters that I ended up sending, actually, because, like, like apology letters, like, you know what? Like, I'm reflecting on everything over the last 4 years of that could have gone wrong, that you could have taken in a way that was hurtful, this, that, and the other. And so, like, I literally wrote all that out, and it's like step-by-step apology kind of thing. Like, I'm so sorry for the ways I acted, and if I spoke to you out of malicious or frustration or whatever. And so that was really helpful. I guess also, like, something that really helped me was, like, kind of trying to understand, like, the psyche behind it, or like the what goes on in somebody's brain. Right. And, like, there's so much, like, one of my counselors really helped me, like, all right, like, there's this test called the color code test. Like, take that test. Like, this will help you understand, like, who you're kind of compatible with and who you're not. Take the...
What's that called? The color code test?
Color code test. So it's one you take with your parents, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you, like, ask... It's like what you were as a child. And then there's the... attachment style test. Yeah. Take that. Take it if you have a significant other or whatever, take it together, because that one is super, super beneficial. It kind of helps you understand how you cope with conflict. Yeah. And then there's the, like, personality test, like the Myers-Briggs personality test, also a huge one. See if you're compatible with that person, whether you're an introvert, extrovert, ambivert, whatever it is.
Yeah. What's an ambivert?
Somebody that's kind of like in the middle.
Oh, in the middle. Okay. So I should have put that together.
Yeah. No, they're super, super rare, actually. Yeah. It's like a 50-50 kind of person. Right. I have a friend that's literally 50-50.
That's interesting.
It is bizarre. So, but, so like all those tests, and then I'm trying to think of the other one. There's one more that I'm thinking of. All those tests have like really helped me like understand and see. And in my dating process, like I ask people all the time, like, have you taken this test? Do you know what your answers are to it? And they're like, no, I've never even heard of that. And I'm like, well, take it and let me know your answer. And so people like come back and like, oh, I'm this. So like attachment style, like my personal attachment style. Yeah. There's like technically 3 attachment styles. There's anxiously attached, there's avoidant attachment, and then there's securely attached. And the anxious attached is like the person, like when there's a problem, there's conflict, like you want to resolve it here and now. The avoidant is like, don't talk to me about it, we'll resolve this, or we'll sweep it under the rug and let it go. Right. And then the secure is like, all right, let's give it some time, then let's discuss it. And the secure is what you really want to be, but yeah. It's crazy how like all those things can correlate.
That probably varies on who you're with too. Like like the person, like if you, because everyone's like, depending on your relationship, you feel more secure with this person versus this person. So that's interesting. Yeah,
no, it's definitely situational, but it's also like your upbringing can play into it, all sorts of things, which is crazy. Yeah. But yeah, it's, I guess like one of the things is like I'm a very anxiously attached person. Yeah. Which I've learned through that test and through discussing with counselor and everything. And I guess like anxious and avoidant attachment styles are the most likely to fail. Like if you pair those 2 people together. Right. And
that makes sense, right? Because one wants it done right now. The other's like, don't stop, I got to go.
Yeah. And a lot of times like me as an anxious attached or person with anxious attachment style, like it's really hard for me to like when is this going to get figured out? Like when is it going to figure it out? Like I'm a proactive kind of person. So I'm like, let's do this. Right. And whereas like the avoidant is like, leave me be. Let me stew in this for a couple days and then let's discuss. And so those 2 things, it's just like headbutting constantly. Right. So yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny too because like on the deeper level, like both parties are probably doing the same thing. It's just the dealing with it, right? Yep. That's interesting because it's funny. The girl I'm dating right now, she we got into not like a fight or anything. Yeah. She's going to be pissed that I even shared this. She's going to be like, shut up about this. But, like, early on, she didn't dump me. We weren't, like, really official yet. But basically, she's, like, one time she sent me this text. She's like, hey, like, I think we should just call it off. Like, we're just better as friends, right? Yeah. And I was like, I was a little shocked because I thought things were going good, Yeah. I was like, oh, really? I thought last time we went out was great. And there was a miscommunication, to keep it short. But yeah. Long story short, anyways, she like later on, like now that we've been dating for a little while, like a few months or so, she mentioned, she was like, it's like I think I got like a little concerned on like in that original part because she'd just not been in any relationships where where I think she said she saw like an Instagram reel or something about it, but she pointed out that there was like in her past relationship she hadn't been with someone who it was like a secure relationship. Yeah. Because and so for that they're the past relationship, they always felt the need to always be like sharing and doing and always be like in constant communication. Otherwise it's like I'm not sure if we're really good, right? Yeah. And for me, like one, I don't think that's I just haven't ever been like that per se. Yeah. But for me, I was like, we wouldn't message for a bit and I'm like, we're good, we're chilling, And so it was interesting as we kind of got to know each other more and get a little more accustomed with each other's communication style. She realized, she's like, okay, like if he's not messaging me, it's not because he's bored or annoyed or wants to move on, and vice versa, right? So I realized, I was like, okay, like, she needs a little bit more communication from me, but also at the same time, like, I know that she's not getting bored or annoyed or whatever if she doesn't respond right away. So it's interesting, like, that you point out the almost figuring out yourself aids in finding that. And then you start seeing like which people have really figured out themselves too, right? Yeah.
It's definitely one of those things that it's like, it's crazy how much that plays into it. Like, so just listening to what you said right there, it sounds like your girlfriend's more of an anxious attachment style, whereas you're more secure. Yeah. And so like, those things, like, they do work together really, really well because you were able to help her understand, like, hey, like, we're okay, like, even though, like, we're not messaging all the time, like, that's okay. And And so like that's kind of those things that like you can recognize in people. So I can like ask very certain triggering questions to people or like pinpointing questions to people now, like when I go on dates, and I know immediately what they are. Yeah, like even without asking.
One, like give me an example.
So like I'm trying to think. Like asking about previous relationships, for example, like, oh, in your previous relationship, like how, I'm trying to think of what I do to make it, I'm trying to think of what I always say. Anyways, I essentially will ask about like either a previous relationship or something.
Can we role play real quick?
Sure.
Hey, Jacob.
Oh boy, here we go.
Where are we going for dinner tonight, Jacob?
I don't know. Where would you like to go? What's your favorite food?
Oh, I don't know. I can't make decisions. Go ahead. What do you want?
How about Italian? Does that work for you?
Oh, yes. Italian would be great.
Perfect. Let's get some Italian food.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. So, what, what, oh man, now I'm stumped here. Put me on the spot, man. This is what happens. I'm trying to think. So I generally will like ask, I'm sorry that I'm cutting into the role play here, but generally I'll end up like asking like about previous relationships, essentially, like where did you find yourself in a previous relationship? Like I'll share, a lot of times I'll end up sharing a little bit of my story and then get it spurring and then kind of get them to divulge a little bit of theirs. And then I can figure out like right off the bat like whether or not that's
so what's been like a typical, what like just in a generic way, like what was one where you're like, because you're right, usually you give a little, get a little back. Yep. But what was one where it was like, oh, okay, like you saw it really quickly, like, oh, okay, I know exactly what type of traits you have, and I'm starting to get a feel for reading this.
Yeah. So I went out with this girl, the super, super awesome girl. She's also divorced, and so I kind of gave her a little bit of my divorce situation, and then I asked her a little bit about hers. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, she's more of a business-minded person, kind of like I am. Yep. I'm like, okay, you're obviously a little bit proactive. And so you can kind of, there's the key point traits, like people that are a little bit more proactive versus like procrastinative, like that seems to be one of those traits too that I've seen that difference in, like people that are more like procrastinating are avoidant. That's like a key indicator. There you go. That's one that's like kind of a key indicator. If you're
well, that's a good question. Hey, like, do you tend to procrastinate on your homework or studies or? Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it sounds innocent too.
Yeah.
Like it's not, because that's the thing too. Like you're not trying to interrogate or like make it uncomfortable, but you're trying to just gauge in a comfortable, natural way, like, who is this person? Yeah. And not always, it doesn't always fall into that trait that like if they're a procrastinator, then they're avoidant. No. But like that tends to be kind of one of the trigger traits. Right. Whereas like if you're more productive, like me personally, like I'd rather get ahead on all my homework. Now I'm graduated now, so I don't have any, thank heavens. But like I'd rather get ahead of a week's worth of homework ahead done so that I can go do my stuff that I want to do versus like wait until Saturday, do everything I want to, and then wait till Saturday and drown myself. And so that is one of those things that I have noticed, like people that are procrastinators generally kind of do fall into that avoidant category or a secure category even because of that. Whereas like somebody that's more like anxious attachment, like you're anxiously engaged, you're trying to get things figured out, trying to get things done. And so that was one of those things that like, okay, are you more productive or procrastinator? Or like another thing that I found out is like you can ask people like how they get up in the morning. Like, do you get up to one alarm or do you get up to 15 alarms? Oh, yeah. And that's one of those things that's like, okay, you're maybe a little bit more avoidant. And then you can ask about like relationships and things and then figure out a little bit more. Right. But yeah, those are kind of the things that like I use to like kind of base that around. And then I'll have them take like the attachment style test. So it was weird. I actually went out with this girl, super cool girl. And I had asked her like, oh, have you taken these tests? And she hadn't taken any of them. Yeah. And I was like, you should take them. I'm just curious what you are. And she was actually the person that literally felt perfect 50% introvert, 50% extrovert. So she's an ambivert, which is super rare. Yeah. She's the only person I've ever met that was an ambivert. Yeah. And then she took the attachment style test, and she was a secure attachment style, which only person I've ever had that took the test that was a secure attachment style. Really? And so I was like, dude, you are like
what the heck? Like, are you doing this on purpose? Like, how did you fall into both of those categories?
How are you the perfect woman?
Exactly.
You're like, hey, are you available next week?
Exactly.
That's funny. No, it's kind of interesting. Have you had anyone who was like opposed to trying? Because I think for the most part, if you personally, I find it fascinating. So it's hard for me to imagine someone being anti, like, I don't want to learn more about myself, you know? But there are those people who are, like, genuinely unwilling to look inwardly and reflect and go, okay, like, who am I? How do I work? Like, in what ways do I work? And that's the other thing, too. Some people in their journey to figure out who they are, they're using it as a way to kind of box themselves in. And it's like you could find out who you are and still like go, okay, that means I need to work on this area so I get a little bit better at this. Yeah. But some people almost use it as like, okay, this explains who I am and this is how I function and I'm not changing who, you know. Yep. So it's all about how you choose to use it. But have you had anyone who's like, no, I'm not, like almost dodging your questions or even dodging wanting to take the test?
I'm trying to think. I've had a couple people because I do it on purpose. Like, I kind of try to, like, develop that relationship, like, enough where I can discuss with somebody and then jump into it.
For sure.
Like,
so they're more comfortable.
Yeah. Because I want to see genuinely if I'm compatible with this person, because I try to do it early on, because if it's just there's no compatibility, why?
Right. Why waste time?
Yeah, and not saying that these tests are everything, the end all be all. No. But, like, for a large part of it could be, like, genuinely speaking, I'm anxious attachment. My ex-wife was avoidant. Yeah. That caused some real headbutting in our marriage.
Well, I think you have a compelling story of, like, it's important to know who you are and know who you're dating and marrying. Because, like, a lot of people, I didn't know about these tests. Like, I kind of know some of the principles you're speaking of, but I didn't know these tests. And so... But a lot of people don't even think about those type of things. Yeah. They just go in with, hey, I really like you. Oh, you're really pretty. Yeah, we clicked for a few weeks. This is really nice. I think I'm in love. You know, and sometimes it works, but yeah.
And that's the thing is, I remembered the last test. The last test is the love language test.
Oh, yeah.
That's the other one I always ask. And it's generally within, like, even the first couple of days of meeting somebody or, like, talking to somebody, like, I bring up, like, all these tests.
When you find the girl that says physical.
Physical touch, yeah. Well,
you're like, oh, yeah. Exactly. We're going to stick around.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's funny because, like, not all, obviously, not categorizing at all, but, like, most women that I feel like I've talked to, one of their top 2 love languages is words of affirmation. Yeah. That just seems to speak loud to most women's hearts. Yeah. Not all at all. But, like, that does seem to be one that tends to be common. Yeah. My personal love languages are physical touch, number 1, quality time, number 2. Yeah. And so those 2 love languages, your first 2 are, like, your most prevalent love languages. Like, those need to be spoken to. Right. Whereas the other 3 can generally, they're there, but they don't have to be, like, 100% fulfilled. Right. And so it's stated, like, for the best, not always, but, like, for the best, like, partnership in a marriage and dating life and anything, it suggests that you and your partner have at least one of each other's top 2 in common. So, like, makes sense. If I'm physical touch and this girl's words of affirmation and physical touch, then we'd probably be compatible. Or if it's my number 2 is quality time, or her number 1 is quality time, or her number 2 is quality time, you're probably pretty compatible. Right. And so there's like all sorts of compatibility tests. Like, I've taken all sorts of them, but yeah, those are the questions that, like, I generally end up asking is, like, because I want to see, like, obviously you don't have to be 100% compatible with somebody, but the more compatible you are with somebody, the easier life is going to be, obviously. Right. And so, yeah, and I'm a genuine, like, advocate, like, opposites attract.
Oh, hold on, real quick. This camera just kicks off every 30 minutes. So.
Oh, nice.
Good thing we caught it right there because we're on a roll. So.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I really think opposites do attract. Yeah. I would say that my ex-wife and I were very, very opposite in so many different ways, but it genuinely, like, we were able to jive on a lot of ways, and sadly things obviously didn't end up working out.
Yeah.
But I really think they could have.
Yeah.
But again, it takes two.
Well, that's the tricky part too, is where, and we'll probably never get her reasons from the side, which probably is sometimes one of the worst parts that sucks the most, when it's like, man, I wish I could know what they're thinking in their head. But but no, I think, the fact that you wanted to work on it and she didn't, or wasn't willing to, or whatever the case is, that's always the part that like sucks the most, because it's like, oh man, like, I was willing, right? And that's a hard case, and obviously, like, you've kind of worked through the fact of like, this is just what it is, and I'm going to move forward, which is the way to do it. And I thought it was interesting on that love languages though, where you mentioned most women are words of affirmation, which I think is a truthful one. But there's this quote I heard that was like, what is it? Let's see if I can remember. This is always the hard part. I always like blank on like the quotes right when but it was let's see, it was, let me look it up real quick so I don't butcher it. But it's something along the lines, it was like, women tend to value words, and men tend to value action, and that's why, or like physical, and that's why women will always wear makeup and men will always lie, is what the phrase was. I heard that, and which I thought was kind of probably not something you want to say on your date, but but nonetheless a little clever and funny. But let me look it up actually.
I definitely think that also kind of comes down to is women are very emotion driven and men are very logistic driven, and that's a good thing, but it's also like super necessary to find somebody that can understand the opposing, like as a man you understand the emotion, and as a woman you understand the logistic, and finding that middle ground of kind of trying to understand the other's point of view.
Let's see if I can even find it. It's kind of a weird Google search.
Hey, it works.
Should have put quote. Yeah, it's interesting, like, and I think it's hard to, okay, where is it? I'm not going to find it, I guarantee it. Okay, yeah, we're going into the weeds of Google search now. But yeah, no, I think especially now too, where what's the right way to say it? There's obviously a lot of, maybe not a lot more, maybe, I don't know. I wasn't around when, we've grown up with, in this generation, same generation, so we're pulling from the same data of knowledge basically. But I think we've all seen an increase in personal insecurity. In just people, men and women. But I think especially women, where women tend to compare a lot more with themselves and with others. And this is just kind of how most, like, just how women are, and a lot of it's physical, right? Because women, women-based life, so, it's so much based off their looks, right? Where a guy can be really bad looking, but if he's successful or whatever, right, that makes a big difference. For a girl. Like, if you're not good looking, or you didn't win in that gene pool, and I think most women are attractive at some level, but yeah, like, there's some women where it's like, wow, she won in the gene pool, and it's the same with men, but like, women have it tough, right? Because women get judged so much more on looks than men do.
Yeah, definitely.
And which makes it hard, because I think it just builds an unfair playing field for insecurity. And so that's where I think it's true, like, words of affirmation and those type of things play such an effect, because they're looking for that validation to help them feel more secure in whatever aspect it is. We all like that, but for women especially, right? And yeah, so to help them feel good about some of those insecurities they have about whatever it is, right? But yeah, I think we've seen that, and I think that's more of a social media issue, right? Because now it's not like your 900 people community that you're comparing and competing against. It's your 7 billion people around the world that you're seeing on a regular basis that you're comparing and competing against, and you can't win that game.
There's a statistic actually. So I have a family friend that is getting their master's in biblical studies, but or their doctorate in biblical studies, sorry, but he wrote a like a thesis paper
Mm-hmm.
on that exact topic of like social media and women and how that affects women.
Yeah.
For men, it doesn't affect us almost at all. But for women, if a woman spends 60 minutes a day on social media, her likelihood of depression increases 60%.
Oof.
And
Where do you pull that study from?
I don't know where he pulled it from genuinely.
I'd love to see that.
Maybe I could reach out to him and find out. But yeah, he said that.
Let me look that stat up just to see if we can find something. But
Yeah.
Go ahead, keep going.
No, so I guess that he said that every 30 minutes you add on to that hour, the women's rate of depression increases 10%, until like you spend over 3 hours on social media as a woman, you're looking at almost a 90% mark of depression, like of having that depression.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like crazy how much that can increase depression levels. And we're seeing a surplus wave here, especially in our generation, of depression, anxiety, and like a lot of things that come with that, sadly. But I really think it's a real thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know for sure where he pulled that study from.
You should just text him real quick and see if he can if he ever sends that over, and then we'll look it up. But yeah, that's interesting because it's tough because it's such it's addictive, right?
Yeah.
We already know that. And so it's hard to give it up, you know. You find yourself scrolling on it in the morning, evening, whenever.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think we saw that a lot with COVID, right? You're stuck inside, you're on it all day, and everything just started skyrocketing on depression, anxiety, because you're not around people. And the other thing too is it's not even. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. It's not even just comparison, but you start living your life vicariously through others, and so then you're unfulfilled because you haven't actually accomplished anything yourself.
Yeah.
And that's tough because now you've watched someone else go live the life that you keep comparing and admiring and wishing you were living without actually ever doing it.
Yeah.
And so you don't receive that same reward of success and validation as if you were to go out and actually accomplish it yourself.
Yeah. It's crazy how that has become like a social norm. Like it's not healthy to compare. And I think you can always compare yourself to somebody else, always. But in the long run, there's so many things that you genuinely can't change, especially physical attributes. Like that's something that's never going to change. And that's something like for me personally, like I've never really struggled with that. But again, I'm not a woman, so I struggle to see that. But that's well,
you're a good looking fella.
Oh,
you know,
yeah, right back at you, dude.
Keeping it looking tight. So
I appreciate it. Right back at you too, man. So your girlfriend's lucky, you know.
Yeah, well,
if it doesn't work out, I'm around. You know, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Don't swing that way. Just
I'll
make it a
send her
joke.
your number. No,
Oh no! I'm talking about
exactly.
you. I'm talking about you. You know, I'm here. Just kidding.
I'll be headed your way. Don't you worry.
Oh man, so no, that's those crazy things, you know, like all that can play into like life, like everything from the tests that we have to even like social media. And that's another thing I do like to ask people, or like before you go on a date, hey, what's your last name? I'm gonna look you up on social media and see how often you're posting or how often.
Interesting.
Because not that like posting is a red flag or anything like that, but like how much time do you spend on social media? Kind of thing. That can be kind of.
Well, it's like what for what purpose are you posting? Is it like I'm that person who just has to update everybody on everything I'm doing every second?
Yep. Or
are you using it as a tool to boost something of purpose? Like what are you using it for?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I personally got rid of my Instagram and everything. I kept Facebook Messenger because I have my members in Argentina that I wanted to keep in contact with. Yeah. But I got rid of Facebook, Instagram, everything for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And genuinely, I saw like my productivity levels like skyrocket. Like instead of laying in bed at night and like scrolling on Instagram or Facebook or something, like I was actually getting homework done and getting a lot more work done. And then I could, do whatever else I wanted, like play games with buddies, like, and chat with them or whatnot. And so like, I don't know, that's something like they say like that scrolling is an addiction.
Sure.
And like I've caught myself even when I'm like bored or like just sitting there for 2 minutes, like pull out Instagram, scroll.
Right.
Reels. The Reels are so easy to scroll on.
Right.
And yeah, it's a productive way of like gaining knowledge and like learning things if you want, but it's also a good way to just blow time.
Well, it's like what percentage of the stuff on there that you're scrolling is like actually knowledge, helpful knowledge, and going into that versus just mindless stuff that doesn't matter. But yeah, because it's like I read something on this where basically because especially that short content, like 1 minute to 30 seconds to a couple minutes, it's your brain loves little snippets. And so by feeding your brain all these little snippets, you're just kind of like giving it small little dopamine hits.
Yep.
And you're never actually retaining much of anything. Yeah. And so you're kind of setting your brain on this like dopamine, like mini explosion train. And that's why it becomes so addictive. But even on the knowledge stuff, because I agree. I think, you can learn some valuable stuff from social media. But I find sometimes when you talk about productivity, being on there sometimes derails the plans and ideas you set in motion. Yeah. Because you see somebody else doing something, you see an idea, you see someone else's opinion, and you go, maybe I should do that instead. Yeah. Or, maybe I should do this differently. And a lot of times, like, maybe sometimes that's true, but a lot of times you just need to stick with the plan you've set in place. Yep. And you may be this close to finding success in whatever you're doing. And usually when you're this close, that's when it's hard and you probably don't think you're close at all. Yeah. But if you just stick with it and don't change the plan, don't, switch it up. Yeah. You're going to get somewhere. But a lot of people, I think, see that and go, scrap it. I got to go do something different because, like, this person's having way more success here. And the truth is you're seeing, like, 30 seconds of what was probably a couple years of work or months of work. Yep. And so, I think a lot of people think there's a quick track to success, and there's not. No.
Nothing's quick.
No.
Nothing in this world that's worthwhile is fast, ever. No. And that's kind of the thing, like, I do think, like, you're 100% right there. Like, I love business, and so, like, I follow a bunch of the business gurus, like all these drop shippers are like, just drop ship and you're going to make $1 billion. Right. No. It never happens. I can't tell you how many drop shipping companies I've tried that don't work out. But I mean, some of the things that I've learned on there have been super beneficial. Right. I run an Etsy store. Yeah. A completely like hands-off Etsy store. I have like 15 items on my Etsy store, and I make a constant income, like a weekly income off selling 3D printing files. Oh, nice. So
tell me about that. How does that work?
It's kind of like a stupid thing, but I genuinely, like, I can show you my bank statements. I make probably like $30 every 2 weeks just for nothing. So it pays for dinner is kind of thing. Right. Like if I want, and if I wanted to put more items on there, I'm sure I'd make more money. But like essentially what I did is I set up an email account, a Gmail, created Google Link Docs or Google Doc links and linked it to my Etsy store. Yep. And all I did is I went in and there's this website called Thingiverse. And so I would go in there and I'd look for non-copyrighted files people made. Yeah. Because Thingiverse is a free website. You can go get anything you want on there. Right. And so what I would do is I go in there and find non-copyrighted files. And I take the title, take the pictures, take everything. Right. It's free use. Public domain. It's public information that's free to use. Nice. And all I do is I take that, copy and paste it into Etsy, pay the fee to list it, which is 25 cents, and then I just leave it up. Yeah. And I put 999 available options in there, and so people go in, they'll pay $3 for a file. They're like, oh, that's really cool. I want that. Click $3. I could have gotten it for free, but they found it on Etsy and want it from there. And so then it just literally takes them to that Google Doc link. They download the file, and then that money goes into my bank account. Well, that's nice. And so like I make some money. Like yesterday I made like $9. Oh, so nice. Like not amazing, but like again, it's food or drinks or whatever I want. Right. Just extra spending money on the side. Right. And that's off of like 10 or 12 files that I have on the website. Right. Very low maintenance, don't have to upkeep, nothing. And so I actually need to get in there and post more. But yeah, that's kind of one of those little side hustles that I saw on Instagram Reels. It's like, oh, I didn't see it with 3D printing files. They did it with like business cards kind of thing.
Right. And you pick the different avenue, but
Yeah, and I was like, okay, 3D printing files is something I'm into. I can 3D print and so upload these files. And so I did that, and I've had my store for, I don't know, a year and a half now.
Yeah.
I made really good money from it.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of one of those business ideas that I got off Instagram, and I've probably made like $1,200 in the last year and a half just from doing that,
nothing. Yeah,
doing
just
literally
letting it
nothing,
run, yeah.
setting something up, and each file maybe took me 5 minutes, 10 minutes to post.
Right.
So I'm like, that's one of those business ventures. Like, if it wasn't for social media, I would have never found it. But
Right.
it's something that obviously I can't pay my bills with, but makes me some money on the side.
Yeah. It's one of those cool, you know, it's that like double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Where there's so much positive and so much negative at the same time. So it's learning to control it and use it, and obviously like the companies running it aren't doing us any favors per se, because they're in the business of making money, and their money is based off users being on there and seeing it, getting their eyeballs, and which, whether that's right or wrong, it is what it is. But
Yeah.
you know, that's where it becomes the responsibility of like people using it.
Yeah.
To go, hey, like this is good for me, this is not good for me, and this is how I control my time and use it. But tell me a little bit, because I know we've talked about how you're business oriented, you like entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
and all those things. So tell me a little bit about that. Like what are you looking into? You know, I think that's always interesting, talking to people who like business and entrepreneurship. There's always some idea cooking in the chamber, right? Like what you're thinking about, what you're working towards. So tell me what you're kind of thinking on right now, the ventures, what's kind of what have you learned recently? Just tell me about that.
Yeah, so I actually just graduated 2 weeks ago. I graduated with a bachelor's in business management, and then I have an emphasis in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of one of those things that like I've always been really passionate about making money. I don't know. That's just kind of how my brain has always thought. Numbers and money numbers. Yeah. And so like in high school, I don't know if you remember this, but I'd like sit at lunch tables during lunch and I'd fix people's iPhones. And that's how I paid for my mission.
Oh, speaking of which, my Apple Watch, like the screen started to come off.
Oh no.
So I was like thinking about that the other day. I was like, I should talk to Jake about it. If like this is even fixable. It probably is. It's, yeah. Anyway, so side note. Back to what you're saying.
I'll look into that and see if we can get that fixed. No, but like, so entrepreneurship has always been kind of a thing, and I had a couple classes in school that were really, really beneficial. I had this one class called IBC, and it's called Independent Business Creation. And what it was is literally they put 16 random people together in a group, and they're like, in the next 14 weeks, you have to create a business, run the business, and like manage everything. And make it profitable within the next 14 weeks in order to pass this class. And so they called it a business class. In reality, like I think it was more of an HR class of learning how to manage people, because it's the worst. But like, so my group, we came up with an idea, and we were assigned a topic. So like we had food was our topic. Okay, so I was like, gosh, we could have done literally anything. We got stuck with food. Right. Which is like, can either be the most lucrative or the least. Right. And so, long story short, we had to run this class, and a lot of the kids in the class weren't like super business minded, in my opinion. But there were a couple of us that really were. Yeah. And we're like, all right, we want to see this thing thrive. Right. And so we came up with the idea of donuts and like frozen hot chocolates. Yeah. And I was running the numbers. I'm like, dude, we're literally like pennies. We're making pennies on these donuts, and that's the most expensive item. Whereas like our frozen hot chocolates literally cost 21 cents to make, and we're making $3 every time we sell them. Like, if we could sell 10 of those versus 100 donuts, we're making
way more money.
Stacks.
Yeah.
And so like at the end of the semester, for the last 4 weeks of the semester, I was put in the role as CEO of the company, and I was ready to kill everybody in that company. Let me tell you.
Mass firing.
Yes.
Was about to go.
I was done.
Terminating.
Which was cool, because at the end, like I was able to kind of like not determine everybody's grade, but like kind of talk to the professor and be like, well, so and so didn't do this. Anyways, and he was like, well, what do you expect in the class? And I was like, well, I did a lot of work. I think I deserve an A. I was like, I'm a little biased towards myself, obviously. He's like, I think you're right. So I got an A in the class, but that was cool. Nice. But that was like one of those like business ventures that like really helped me understand like business is hard. Like no matter what you go into, there's going to be ups and downs. You've got to source opportunities and everything else. And so Definitely not going into food at all.
That's a tough industry.
It's a super hard industry, and I have a lot of respect for people that do have that. But honestly, one of the professors that was over teaching that class, and he was over the like CEOs, so like I got to work a little bit with him. The guy is just a business genius.
Yeah.
He would never say it out loud, but literally, dude's like an unspoken billionaire kind of thing.
Yeah. This is the professor? Is that what you said?
Yeah. He's sold like 3 or 4 tech companies for over like $300 million each.
Right.
And so obviously he had other investors with him and everything, but like he never told us I'm a billionaire ever, but like he told us how much the business is sold for, what percentages he owned of the business, and you can kind of do your math and figure out where he's investing his money and everything. He probably has a significant amount of money.
It's always the low-key people. The low-key guys. There's so many low-key rich people.
Oh, yeah.
Where they just seem like the most average, normal people. They don't flaunt their money, but they're rolling in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that was this guy for sure, and he was just super, super smart guy. Like, had a lot of respect for him. But that was one of the things. He's like, honestly, tech is a grind. He's like, it's feast or famine. But he's like, if you want to get into something, create something like a CRM or create a software that's going to help other businesses.
Right.
So more of a business to business instead of business to consumer mentality. And he's all like, you will literally thrive.
Yep.
And so that was one of the things. I actually worked with a tech startup up in Idaho at that same time that I was taking this class. Mm-hmm. And they were a B2B tech startup. And I felt super blessed to be able to work with them and see like a lot of their success and help kind of guide it towards that. Yep. And like they're thriving now. Like I came back down here, so I had to part ways with them sadly, but they like just won like a major award at like the Boise Entrepreneur Conference. They each, like, there's the three owners of the company, they each won an award.
Oh wow.
And so they were each granted like
what's the company's name?
It's called Subbit.
Subbit, okay.
Yeah, they're awesome. So Nick Hepworth is like the founder, and then Jay and Aoi. Aoi's from Japan. He's super dope. Anyways, they'd been grinding on this company, and finally they're making it work out and everything. And I'm stoked for them because I'm just stoked to see where they go. Yeah. But like literally, I could see them becoming like the next Amazon kind of thing.
Really?
Like huge. So
awesome. What is it? Let's look that up.
Yeah, it's called Subbit.io. Let's see.
Did I spell it right?
It's Subitt.
I see.
Let's see. I think it's Subitt.io. Maybe they.
Let's get rid of this real quick.
Yeah.
See what happens.
There it is.
This one.
Yep. Subitt. There we go. So yeah, they're super cool.
Okay, so you kind of like, it's like list your business and then subscribe to that business.
Yep. And so I'd go out. I was their operations manager for a little bit, and I was their CFO as well. Mm-hmm. But I went out and I would like go to all the businesses in Rexburg and like, hey, this is our business. We'd cold call people also, and like, this is the business model. This is how it can help you. It's not going to cost you a penny. Mm-hmm. We take. Is it
a percentage off the?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like a 15% of the profit, but that takes out like all the credit card transactional fees. That takes out everything. We had a payment processor, everything. So it just was like straight to your bank account kind of thing. And so what we're doing is we're bringing fresh eyes to your business.
Right.
And so you can subscribe from everything from haircuts to house care to lawn care to anything you can, tanning, like micro needling, whatever you want. Like it could be subscribed to on this website. And then they also do products, so like mystery boxes and things like that. And we weren't supplying any of the product, any of the services. We were just supplying the domain and an app kind of thing. And so it was bringing fresh eyes to it. And so a lot of the business owners were like, well, I don't really see how this is going to be beneficial. And then once we kind of explained how fresh eyes could be on there, because it's like Amazon but for subscriptions.
Right.
And
it's like mass scale advertising for the small business.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost them a penny. Right. And so they're like, yeah, we'll sign up.
Right.
And so what it is like, okay, if they get a subscriber, we make a little bit of money. And so it was super beneficial. I was able to kind of understand the tech side as well as kind of like get into that marketing side as well as the sales side and operations, everything. And so I kind of wrapped my head around the whole operation, and I worked really closely with the founder of the company, Nick. And I had a really, really good time. Anyways, like this is kind of something similar, obviously not this idea at all.
Right.
But like I would love to get into like the tech side of things, because it's feast or famine. It's hard at first, but once you get into it, like it's an infinite cash flow at that point. It's a cash cow. So
right, because you just have to create the software once,
Yep.
and then it's just market, sell.
Yep.
And so you don't have that, you don't have that product or whatever build up,
Yeah.
or a lot of flush cash up front. So yeah, that's one thing I've heard with software is like, you're going to spend the money up front.
Yep.
Might be a little sucky up front, but yeah, if you can get the sales going and make it happen, it's profitable.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people I think are starting to get into, is the software and technology and going like that. But that's cool though that they've. So what did you end up doing? I'm not to go back in the story a little bit, but what did you end up doing with the donuts and the hot chocolate? Did you like cut the donuts out, or did you keep the donuts? Or
So it had to have been a group consensus. Sorry, I should have explained this.
No, you're good.
Better. No, so it had to be a group consensus essentially, but like finally at the end, like my company, we could not agree on anything. Like it was so bad that we couldn't agree on like a product to begin with. And so we had to, like, we were split out into, we call them learning groups. So the 16 people were split out into 3 groups, and we had to learn, we kind of had to go product test and everything and kind of figure out what we wanted to do. And then we came back together, had to come back together and present our ideas. Yeah. And 2 of our groups had essentially the exact same idea, my group and another group. And then this third group had the idea of like protein balls. We're like, I don't know how well that's going to do on a college campus.
Right. Protein balls.
Yeah. And so we dropped the protein balls idea, and then we were thinking like carnival foods and then like sodas and like mixed drinks kind of things. Yeah. And the other group just like did not want to go with our idea. And so we literally had to drop all 3 ideas, and then we came up with the donuts and hot chocolate. We were literally losing money on the donuts. We were making air fried donuts. Right. And they were really, really, really good donuts actually, because they're like cake donuts. But we were losing money, like essentially losing money on toppings, on everything. And so we had to kind of readjust. And so we started buying and reselling. So we were buying Walmart donuts, glazing them, and like topping them and then reselling them, but then we're only making like 20 cents a donut. Right. So essentially with our time, and because we had to book everything out, like time, labor, everything was charged. Yep. And we had to like keep all of it booked, organized on Google Sheets and everything. And so long story short, it was cutting into our profits. Like we were losing money consistently every single week. Yeah. And every 3 weeks we had to get up and present to like the committee, which like we had to literally go out and get a bank loan to like start the company. So we went out and we took a bank loan for like $2,200, I think it was, to buy our equipment, to get all the product, everything. And so we had to present to that committee, the bank loan committee, as well as like the professors that were teaching and helping us learn. Like we had to present to them every 3 weeks and kind of explain what we were doing. But long story short, like I feel bad saying this, but like I got in as CEO and I was like, we need to cut donuts, and everybody fought me. They're like, that's our product. We're called Dashing Dough. Yeah. And I was like, guys, we're literally losing money. At the end of the day, we make like 2 cents a donut. Like the margin is more. I think it was 28 cents a donut is what we were making. But essentially with time and labor and everything else, we're almost losing money. Yeah. And I was like, our drinks sell super well. I was like, we should do mocktails. And they're all like, I don't think that's a good idea. And so one day, like, I had the company card, and I just, like, grabbed my buddy. I was like, all right, because if we ever use the card, there had to be 2 of us. So I grabbed the operations manager. I was like, let's go into Idaho Falls, and let's go buy mocktail mix. And then we're going to just, like, make mocktails. Yeah. And so I came back. I put them on the menu, mixed them, and started selling them. And they started selling like hotcakes, dude. They were just sell. And we were charging like $3.75 a drink. Yeah. And that just like flipped our profits on its head, and we like went through the roof. Yeah. And we were able to break even at the end, essentially break even. I think we had like $125 profit for the entire semester. Right. Which is like, okay, whatever. We could have made a lot more if we did that earlier on, but like we were upside down, like digging our graves like 2 weeks before the end of the semester before we released those drinks. Heck yeah. But yeah, essentially by the end of the semester, like it just came down to like the drinks. Like we were making like 4 dozen donuts at the beginning of the semester a day, selling almost all those, and then by the end of the semester we were down to like a dozen donuts a day, and selling mainly drinks. And we'd sell like 30 of those a day probably, and we made decent money that way. And so it worked out, but like we'd have to go into bank recon and like show like the bank like, okay, this is how much money we're making every week. Like it was super useful. Like how much are we putting towards our loan at the end of the week? How much are we doing this, that, and the other? What are our operations looking like? Like how much how much supply do we have? How much supply is that taking out of our profit margin? Is there any spoilage? Like everything. We had to keep track of everything you could ever imagine.
That's cool. Seeing the real application of it and utilizing the things you're learning in a real life application, I think is super valuable. So that's neat.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting. I won't say what we can talk. I can tell you about it after. But I've got this product that I've been working on. It's in the beverage type thing, and I was looking at like beverages, and then like the thing we're creating, and it's a super competitive market. You know what I'm saying? And so analyzing and figuring out, okay, like what's the best way to start to get capital and keep things moving so you actually can manage your product line and make it work, and that's where almost the software you're talking about is a lot of times is more profitable, because you're looking at just the game of business and what works, what doesn't work, what you're going to have to do, what's the initial investment and time and effort, and who all has to be involved and all those factors. And so it's fun. It's a fun game, especially if you have the mind for it and if you like that. I thought it was interesting where you talked about the as the CEO and just finally kind of making a call and saying we're going to go do this, because that's one thing I've worked in a couple organizations where they work in a lot of committees. And it's tough because committees rarely agree on everything. And if you're a committee that believes you have to be unanimous in decisions, you rarely will make progress. Because no one ever sees eye to eye. And there's so many factors that play into decision making, whether it's personal decisions or trying to bolster yourself in the group or in the company, or you're doing it for whatever reason it is. Rarely make a decision. But I think that's the sign of a good leader, right? Listen to the community, listen to everyone, get a consensus, hear what they're saying. But then at the end of the day, someone has to be the decision maker. Someone has to make the call and go, we're going to go in this direction. Here's why. Here's why I feel like it's the best choice. And some people get to a point where, and that's where it turns into bad leadership. If they get to a point where you're listening to people and they're just kind of going off the rails, that's one thing. But yeah, after working in several organizations where it was all committee driven, eventually you just pull your hair out because you're like, we are not making any progress. And so that's interesting that you talk about finally kind of taking that role and saying, okay, I'm making the decision, I'm making the call, we're going to move forward. And we're going to do what needs to be done to get where we need to go. And I think that's just a valuable thing in general. It doesn't even have to be business related, just valuable in life. Being able to take that leadership role and go, we're making a choice. Let's move on it.
Yeah. And I think another thing that it was funny with that group that we had there were very obvious leaders. And we were the people that took charge. There was 5 of us out of the 16 that were there every single day until from start to finish, every single day, taking charge, making sure everything's cleaned up, everything's taken care of, logged, entered, the whole 9 yards. There was 5 of us. And so there were 3 rotations is what we called them. Rotation 1, 2, and 3, and I was the CEO of rotation 3. The CEO and the operations manager of rotation 1, they kind of held that leadership position, even though they didn't have the title, but they held that, and everybody they kind of showed we're the bosses kind of thing. And then that rolled over into rotation 2, and even the bosses in rotation 2 kind of just listened to them. And then it got to rotation 3, and I disagreed with them, and I was I'm you guys need to step down because this is not your calling of sorts right now. There are different leaders that need to take charge. And I was like, not to be rude to them because they were amazing. They did an amazing job. But like, I think the best leaders know when to like take advice and give advice, but they also know when to like step away from their leadership role and be like, okay, maybe I'm not 100%
right
needing to be the front and center of attention kind of thing.
Right.
And that was something that for me, like I learned in that leadership role, like essentially this was a calling for the church. Like not really, but like because it's a church school at BYUI and everything,
right.
like this is a calling. I wasn't paid. My time wasn't, none of that. And so what I learned in that is just like, good. I don't ever want like that kind of calling. I don't want a leadership calling that it's just going to tear my hair out kind of thing.
Right.
Like I'm okay being like the background guy.
Sure.
like I can make choices for myself and I can help push an opinion one way, but like I don't need to be the front and center of attention. So like that was one huge thing that I learned in this, and that was one thing for me. Like in my mission, I was never called to leadership role. I was training 16 months of my mission. I trained.
Right.
And I was always like, why was I not a zone leader? Why did I never get called to be a zone leader? And after that time with this company, I was like, thank heavens I was never called to be a zone leader. Not that I couldn't do it, but it was just a lot of headache for nothing.
Well, I think you bring up a good point of like the best leaders are also the best followers.
Yeah.
Because they know how to value other people's opinions. They know how to value and see and like head in a certain direction. But also, I think the best leaders know how to delegate, like you're saying, and go, hey, like I don't have to be the one with all the ideas, or I don't have to be the one who, you know, is the smartest guy in the room. Because I've seen a lot of leaders where they have that smartest guy in the room mentality, and so they fill themselves. They put people around who they see as less than, or aren't gonna, and so then decisions aren't made properly. You know, poor ideas come out of that because they want to be the guy.
Yep.
And so checking your ego at the door and going, you know what, I'm going to surround myself with the smartest, best people I can who can make decisions, and then highlight them, let them shine, really just bolsters everybody and makes them good. I have to pee real quick. You mind taking a pee break?
I was going
All right, perfect. Let's do that then. Okay, we're back.
We're back. Anyways, yeah, this Keaton is his name. He invited me. When I was couch surfing in Utah, I went couch surfed with one of my good buddies, and then I went couch surfed with Keaton.
Right.
And he kind of jumped into. He's all like, "Dude, your circumstances are very similar to those of my roommate. My roommate went through a really, really terrible divorce. Like it was bad for him."
This is Keaton telling you this.
Yeah, Keaton's like, "Dude, like you need to talk to my roommate because my roommate's
and Keaton
awesome."
made the app, right?
Yeah.
Okay, he's the one that's living up there. You were hanging with him, and Keaton is telling you about his buddy who rooms with him.
Yeah,
okay.
And his roommate, so like super cool apartment complex, or apartment living situation. There's 3 of them. Keaton started this super cool app to help companies find employees.
Yeah.
And then his other roommate, the one that went through the divorce, started in like AI generation, like RPG software. So like AI for like Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing.
Hey, yeah.
So he started it like 7 years ago, back when AI was like a brand new baby kind of thing. He heard about it and he like got in with the companies and created and like used their AI to help him like create these Dungeons and Dragons like realms kind of thing. And then he took it from there, and his company has like grown like crazy. Yeah. And now he's like getting contracts with like Disney and like these big companies. Oh, wow. So dude's thriving.
Yeah.
Anyways, so his roommate went through about 2 years ago, went through a pretty similar divorce to that of mine.
Yeah.
But his wife ended up like leaving the church and coming out as gay, and he's like that. It caught him completely off guard because he would have never known. It was his high school sweetheart. He went on his mission, came home, they dated, got married.
That's crazy.
Then they were married for like almost 4 years, and then that happened. And he said,
a double whammy smack. I mean,
yeah, he's like it wrecked him. But anyways, he told me he took me out to lunch. He heard my circumstances from Keaton, and then he called me. He's like, "Hey, I'm Keaton's roommate. Want to take you to lunch? I'm just talking to you." And so that was super, super beneficial. So he took me to this really cool ramen place in Provo. And we're sitting at lunch, and he's all like, "Have you gotten back into dating?" I'm like, "I've been on one date." And he's like, "Okay, let me give you." He's like, "I've been dating for 2.5 years now."
Let me pull out the Rolodex.
Exactly. He's all like, "Let me point out some things here that I would suggest. He's all like, number one, he's like, obviously, like, opposites attract.
Okay, we're back. A little technical difficulty, but we're back.
There we go. Full card storage is the worst.
I know.
But no, so Keaton's roommate essentially told me, he's like, all right, dude, like, he's all like, I know a lot of the time us as guys, we like go for that girl that like you feel the immediate spark. She's like, I'm telling you, every time you feel that, red flags. And I was like, really? And he's like, I'm dead serious. He's like, just take it from me that it's red flags. So I was like, really? He's like, the girls that are stable are like, not saying that all girls are this way, but he's like, the girls that are like stable, that have motivation, that like want to go somewhere in their life, that have their life planned out and like know what they want. He's like, they never just like jump. Right. He's like, they're the ones that are like calm, take it play by play and like figure things out. He's like, so look for that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And so when he said that, I was just like, that makes sense. So he told me that. He gave me a handful of books to read and everything that kind of helped with that. But like, I was like, oh, okay, that makes total sense. So that
was one of those books. Got one of them on top of head?
Yeah, I do. It is called, I have an entire list of books that I either am reading or have to read. Let's see here. There we go. No More Mr. Nice Guy was one of them. How to Win Friends and Influence People. He didn't recommend that one, but The Power of the Subconscious Mind. And then the last one, the one that I'm reading right now, I'm trying to remember what it's called. Let me pull up my Amazon real quick here and look at, because that's where I always end up buying my books. It was...
Dude, Amazon's so clutch.
It is. Buy cheap books. That one is called Learned Optimism. How to change your mindset to change your life.
There you go.
Super good book. Highly recommended. So, anyways, he recommended those books. He's like, I read these books and it kind of helped me understand why, like, the immediate sparks.
Yeah.
Aren't always red flags, but like how they can be a little bit of that. So, that was something really cool. So, kind of goes along with what you were saying. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things. So.
Well, too, that's the one thing, like, and I guess that's probably been kind of a theme of what we've talked about is, like, a lot of things will happen in life that are challenging. Yeah. And throw you for a loop and make you question, like, what on earth even is, like, what I'm doing with my life, right?
Yeah.
But at least for me, and it sounds like for you too, but at least for me, in every one of those situations, even though it sucked in the moment, it was really terrible in the moment, after the fact, I'm always not happy, but appreciative of the lessons I learned.
Yeah.
Because I can think of instances where now I'm wiser, or I don't make that same mistake.
Yeah.
Or I can see a pattern where it's like, okay, that's something I did do or didn't do, and that didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so I can navigate life more easily. And so I guess that's the one thought I have is, like, one, we should listen to old people more because they have a lot more life experience
yeah.
And people don't value that anymore at all. They just think old people are, old cracks that don't have nothing to...
Senile.
Yeah, they're like... And that's true. They are a little at times. Like, they say some crazy stuff. But they have a lot of value that... Because people think there's, like, life is so much different. Life has not been so much different from humankind. It's just... It's the same problems on repeat in different formats. And there's so much value you can learn from that. But the other thing, too, is the only time those challenges are really not worth it is if you choose to not take the lessons and learn from them and apply them back.
Yeah.
Right? And I think there are people who just generally don't learn anything, or they let that issue become their personality or whatever it is, right? And they dwell in it and don't take the value from it. But yeah, that's something that I think we've been talking about in this conversation quite a bit, is that kind of resiliency to bounce back and see what that challenge gave you rather than dwell on what it didn't give you.
Yeah. No, that's one of the things that I've really, like, come to learn as of recent, like with my marriage and everything else. Like, the Lord has a plan, and a lot of times that plan doesn't align with yours.
Yeah.
And his plan is going to find a way every single time, no matter what, no matter how hard you try to persuade that plan, it's going to happen. And just here's a random snippet, like just to kind of explain that. Like I've been trying to go back to my mission in Argentina for the last 5.5 years.
Yeah.
Like I've wanted to get back there, see my members, everything for 5 years now. And right now I start my job after graduating. I got my big boy job essentially lined up.
Yeah.
And
where are you working?
I'm working as an operations manager for a roofing company.
Okay,
so,
there you go.
Yeah,
that's sick.
It's great stuff. I love the company. They're amazing to me. I've worked for them for the last couple of years, but they kind of hired me in this position, as my graduation position kind of thing. But so I go back to that in June, and so I'm like, all right, well, I have 1 month before I go back. Like, I'm going to Argentina. Like, I have the money, I have the opportunity. Like, now's the time.
Right.
And so for the last like month, I've been like planning like tediously like every little detail of my trip back to Argentina.
Yeah.
And it just felt wrong. Like I wasn't excited for it.
Right.
I was like, why the heck is this not working out? Like, why do I not feel like excited for it? Like, I mean, I planned out everything. I had flights for dirt cheap. Right. I had every little detail. And I was like, I kind of like came to the idea like, all right, I'm not feeling excited because I'm not going to get to take anybody with me. I'm going to go by myself,
right? Which
doesn't matter, but like it's cool to reminisce with somebody else, you know?
Yeah.
And so finally, like I called one of my buddies and I was like, "You want to go with me?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's go." And I was like, "Okay, perfect, let's go." And then the more I sat there and I was thinking about it, I was like, "This just doesn't feel right for some reason."
Yeah.
And I was like, "All right, I called him up and I was like, all right, like I don't know that I want to go back to Argentina for some reason." I was like, how do you feel about Spain and Italy? Yeah. And he's like, dude, I've always wanted to go to both those places. Like, let's do it. So we actually booked our flights and everything last night.
That's hype.
So we're flying into Barcelona. We're going to stay a day in Barcelona, a day in Madrid, and then fly over to Rome, do a couple days in Rome, a couple days in Milan. Then he flies out.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to stay an additional week and a half.
Hey.
And one of my favorite members from my very first area in my mission, she got married and moved to Germany. Married a German guy, moved up there. And this is like the lady that like she was essentially my mom in the mission. Like my very first area when I was struggling, like she was always there kind of thing, like me and my companion. She was a single mom of 5 daughters. And I remember like getting to the mission and I was like, that was the first place we ate dinner at. And I remember being so mad at my companion, like, you really took me to like a single woman's house. And he's like, Elder, you don't understand the circumstances. And I was like, dude, you know the mission rules. Right. And he looked at me, he's like, the spirit of the law and letter of the law. He's like, you got to differentiate between the two. And I was frustrated because I was like, very letter of the law. Like, we follow the rules, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And then my heart really changed because this family, they struggled. And so we were able to help them. We got them to church every week, like everything. And anyways, so I got in contact with her last night. This all happened like literally 4 a.m. last night. Right. So anyways, I got in contact with her and I was like, hey, I'm going to be in Europe. Like, I'd love to come to Germany and see you guys. And she messages me back. She's like, oh my goodness, like that would be amazing. And then she goes, her husband's not a member. She goes, we're trying to go back to church right now, like get into everything. Like we speak Spanish, they speak German. Like that's hard for us, but like we're trying to get back into the church. And within the next 3 weeks, we want to have our daughter, Julie, the youngest, that I knew. She was 2 when I was in Argentina. She's like, we want to baptize her. Will you baptize her when you come?
That's awesome.
And so I was like, dude, like, maybe that's the reason, like, I wasn't supposed to go back to Argentina. Yeah. No, and so, like, for me, that was, like, crazy. And I was just, like, mind blown. I was like, of all things, like, I apparently wasn't supposed to go to Argentina for some reason. Like, everything could have worked out. I could have made it work, but I just kept feeling over and over and over and over like it wasn't supposed to be right. And then that lined up for me. And I was like so excited because I'd talked with this lady. She's like, when Julie turns 8, like, I want you to come to Argentina and baptize her. Well, they don't live in Argentina anymore. Right. So now I'm going to go to Germany and baptize this little girl, which I'm like so excited about. But kind of one of those things of like, you know, the Lord puts circumstances in your life. And anyways, doesn't go according to plan almost ever.
No, But no, I think, man, you bring up such a good point because I think it's, you know, and it doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. Like, I think there's really something to, there's outside forces that we don't necessarily see or know about that help us shape our lives.
Yeah.
And I think there's just so many accounts. Like, I think a lot of people try to disprove that and say, like, no, like, we make up our own lives and destiny. Like, there's no outside impact. And like, yeah, we have the agency to choose. But I think there's just more examples of people being guided through, you know, we call it the spirit. I guess you could call it spiritual intuition, and being open to hearing those things, those non-tangible things we can't necessarily, you know, explain or grab onto, but just those feelings and things that that we can't explain per se, but guide us to do what we need to do and find the right path, right? Like you're saying with versus, you know, going to Germany versus Argentina. What, like, probably both would have been great.
Yeah.
But, you know, you just felt like, man, that's not the right thing for me now. And I think that's so crucial. Like, I think a lot of people don't value that and discount that being able to, let's call it spiritual intuition. They discount that because they're like, it doesn't matter. It's not real. But just in talking to people, even on here, you can tell the people who know and have spiritual intuition wisdom and the people who don't.
Yeah.
And it's pretty obvious. And the way their life is gone and the way they live their life is very demonstrates how wise they are to that spiritual intuition and being guided by, you know, those outside forces, to use a generic term for people who aren't necessarily of our faith. But yeah, I think that's why, you know, religion becomes so important.
Yeah.
Because of just for that factor, beyond all the good morals that it can, you know, teach and bless your life with, but being able to be guided where maybe you don't necessarily have all the answers, because we don't, right?
Yeah. No, that's the thing is, man, I had to learn that more than anything. Like on my mission, my mission was really difficult with like certain circumstances that arose, and not to get into all that, but like certain things happened in my mission that shouldn't have happened with leadership and everything else. And anyways, long story short, I had to learn that, you know, men are men and God is God.
Yeah.
Men are not God and God is not a mortal man.
Mm-hmm.
God's a perfect man. And that's the thing that, like, for me, I had to learn that. Yeah. And I think I had to learn that in my mission so that, like, I didn't go astray when my divorce happened, you know?
Yeah.
I think, not saying that God had planned that I was going to get divorced.
No.
But, like, that was one of the things, like, agency. Like, I learned that, like, you know, God really does have a plan for each and every one of us. And we can either take choice to make a conscious effort and realize that he's there for us and that he has that plan for us, or we can make the conscious effort to go against that.
Yeah.
Which way is the right way? That's for you to decide, kind of thing. Who am I to judge? You know, that's for everybody to decide on their own. And that's one of those really hard things is, like, for me, I've seen the infinite blessings, just the windows of heaven opened as I follow the commandments that the church has set and the guidelines that have been placed therein. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the blessings are endless. So for me, it's really easy to make that choice, like, follow the commandments. Yeah. Whereas I know other people that's harder for them. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I really do. I'm a big advocate that, you know, God lives and that he's there for each and every one of us. And, you know, our plans aren't his plans, but his plans are generally the better plans. And he's got the eternal foresight, right, whereas we don't.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. No, there's so much to be, I don't know. I'm so glad we have that knowledge to help us find our way, because there's so many things we just don't know about life. Yeah. And you know, that's where having something, you know, we call it God, a spirit, you know, but having something in your life to give you guidance, whether you believe in, you know, Christ or you're Muslim or whatever the faith is, having something is better than nothing, especially in life where you just don't know. But, well, this has been, I think we've had a beautiful conversation. This has been a lot of fun, a blast, always a good time to chat, and I'm excited. I think we just had some great discussion, and you'll have to tell me how this trip to Germany goes, because
Oh yeah, dude.
I just got my passport too. I got to start using that in some fashion.
Come with us, bro.
That'd be hype. I'd have to, man.
Fly to $600.
Hey, send me the links and I'll look at my calendar, and if not this one, we'll plan something, because I got to put that baby to good use. But but thanks for coming on, Jacob. This has been fun. We'll do it again sometime soon. So all right, brother.
Thanks, dude.